VETtalk Radio is proudly supported by the Animal Referral Hospital.
This week.
Stand by to learn some highly technical veterinary terminology.
Sometimes they just have quite a lot of sleep in the corner of their eyes first thing in the morning, and it's sort of like crusty eye boogers, we call them.
Yep. There's more to this story than meets the eye.
Oh, boomtish.
And how can you tell if your pet is sick?
Hot nose or dry nose?
Oh my God, the dog's dying.
He's got a dry nose. Yeah, okay.
You might be surprised at some of the subtle signs that our pets show us.
And it can be tricky working out exactly what's wrong with a pet, even for vets.
I certainly recall a cat that used to come in every Saturday night with an acute asthma attack because the owner would be getting dressed and she'd be spraying perfume around that time, and it took us a while to work out that's what was triggering it.
Two of Australia's top specialist veterinarians get down to basics.
G'day, I'm Brian Pickering.
And I'm Kaye Browne.
And that's little Chica in the background, growling away at us. All those stories and more right here on VETtalk.
Aren't you forgetting something?
You mean the radio part?
Yes.
Well, look, we've had a few people actually ask us, what station are you on? And although we might be on radio again in the future, we're only online at the moment. So technically speaking, this is a podcast, but VETtalk podcast, it doesn't really kind of sound very sexy, does it? So we'll call it VETtalk or Pet Talk or basically whatever takes your fancy.
Well, it's kind of tricky because in the States, of course, they have VETtalk there, but that means veteran soldiers. It's short for those kind of vets. So yeah, it's a bit confusing.
Anyway, we're by Aussies, for Aussies, and with Aussies. And we're also available in the iTunes store so that you can just download us and listen to us via iTunes, or just go to our website, which is the VETtalk website, which is vettalkradio.com.au. Ever since we started this show, we've actually realised how many human ailments also seem to be seen in our pets. And one of those is a thing called dry eye. Of course, not being doctors or vets, actually, we can't tell you anything about it, but we know someone who can. Welcome, Dr. Barbara Fougere.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Kaye.
I suppose we should ask, what is dry eye? What are the symptoms of dry eye?
Well, I guess we can relate this to ourselves sometimes. Sometimes our eyes are a little bit irritated and you feel a bit scratchy and you want to rub them. Dry eye is a condition that people get and animals get, particularly dogs. And it's a condition where the tears stop being produced, so the eye literally gets quite dry. Oh. The symptoms can be quite subtle, and lots of dogs have this condition, and it's easily missed. Sometimes they just have quite a lot of sleep in the corner of their eyes first thing in the morning, and it's sort of like crusty eye boogers, we call them, in the corner of the eyes.
I speak with great authority about that.
She's very good at getting them out. Yeah.
So eye boogers is one clue. Rubbing of the eyes, and sometimes just a general look of redness and irritation in the eyes. And sometimes, you might not have any symptoms at all. And we usually try to test older dogs routinely at least once or twice a year, because a lot of dogs have it, and it can be quite subtle, and it's pretty easy to treat. So it's caused by the immune system actually shutting down the tear production. So it's actually considered a bit of a autoimmune disease, and it is in people as well. It's a special little test. It's pretty gentle. It's two special little bits of paper that we pop into the corner of the eye, one at a time. They look like very long eyelashes. And the moisture in the eye actually wets the paper and spreads a little dye. And we can actually measure how much tear is actually being produced. And so there's a range, and if it falls below a certain level, we can actually diagnose dry eye, and that's a good indication to start treatment. Sometimes it can be a little bit in the grey zone, and sometimes we try some therapies, just see how we go. And sometimes it's absolutely perfectly fine even in old dogs. So it's a worthwhile test to ask your vet about. It's called a Schirmer tear test, or just remember the tear test, and your vet can check for you, particularly if you've got an older dog in the family, and just as part of your routine annual checkup when you go in for your vaccination or for something else, just ask them to check with the tear test.
Now that I think about it, I've actually seen quite a number of dogs, not just our dogs when we do pet days and whatever, with crusty eyes and whatever. So what can be the result of not actually getting this seen to and getting it fixed?
It can be pretty devastating, actually. I mean, eyes are pretty precious, and the worst case scenario, and we've certainly seen them in our clinic, are eyes that have actually got superficial scarring on them just because of the rubbing and the irritation over a long period of time. Quite apart from that, it's just very uncomfortable for dogs. So, if your dog is rubbing his eyes, get him to the vet straight away. There's nothing more annoying than having itchy eyes or very sore eyes. And so the worst case scenario is very red, scarred eyes, and it can actually potentially lead to ulceration on the surface of the eyes if there's not enough lubrication there. So it can be pretty nasty. The treatments are quite straightforward. We try using some natural treatments to start with. It's something simple as a long-acting artificial tear, which it's nice and gentle, very safe to use.
And they don't kick up a fuss when you put it in.
No, there's a special way of putting them in that makes it nice and easy, so you don't have to go chasing your dog around the place.
You'll have to try it on me. I'm not real good at eye drops.
Yeah, the dogs are much better than Browne at eye drops, I tell you.
I think it's when you see them coming that it worries you, so you have to keep your eyes closed.
And is there a time of the year that it's worse? Like, you know how we get hay fever? I get itchy eyes myself in hay fever season.
Well, there's certainly things that will aggravate it, just like it does with us. Dogs that have their heads sticking out of the window as you're driving along, in the wind can certainly make it worse. And certainly summer, lots of sunlight can make it worse, and there are some goggles. You can buy doggy sunglasses that can help. But most of the time it's worse, not so much in a season, but first thing in the morning. That's because when dogs go to sleep, they don't always shut their eyes completely, so their eye is slightly open for most of the night while they're sleeping and snoring. And that little bit of exposure without the blinking can certainly dry the eye out overnight. And that's why the eye boogers appear first thing in the morning, is because it's all sort of dried up. All that moist lubrication on the surface of the eye has dried up, and that's what causes the crusts.
I love it. You heard it first here. Eye boogers. Look out for those eye boogers.
What about cats?
It's not really that common in cats. I'm sure there's one or two around. I certainly haven't seen a cat with dry eye. It's definitely more of a problem in dogs, and certainly a problem in people. So if you're feeling a bit crusty in the morning, it's probably a good idea to see your doctor as well.
Well, that's the thing we call sleep, isn't it? Sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep in your
but if your eyes are actually irritated and a bit sort of feel dry, I mean, we can actually feel the dryness in our eyes, then it's a good idea to get hold of some artificial tears and talk to your doctor about it.
We might keep some handy, because as the red wine gets tastier and tastier, and
that's a slightly different eye problem, I think.
Well, that's red eye, not dry eye. One last thing. What about other small animals like rabbits and animals like this? Do they kind of succumb to this kind of thing as well?
It's very uncommon in those in other animals, but again, anytime your rabbit rubs his eye, or your guinea pig rubs his eye, or your turtle rubs his eye, or your bird rubs his eye, get them to a vet. Don't muck around with eyes. They are quite precious. They're very fragile as an organ. It doesn't take much to create a lot of damage. So, if you're at all concerned, don't hang about. Just get them checked out.
Good advice from Dr. Barbara again. Dr. Barbara Fougere, veterinarian extraordinaire.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. You're listening to VETtalk, and you can hear us in the iTunes store, or you can just go to vettalkradio.com.au.
Would you know when your pet's not well? Do you know the signs to look for? Well, here in the studio to help us out is Dr. Jo Sillince, CEO of Pets Australia. Jo, our pets are pretty good at hiding things, so would you agree that most pets don't really show the signs that they're unwell, do they?
Oh, yes, they do.
Do
and
they?
in plenty of different ways. But let's just talk about major problems, okay, as compared to minor skin conditions and a few fleas. Mm-hmm. When we talk about major problems in older animals, we're thinking about things like diabetes, kidney disease, cancers, heart disease, autoimmune disease, and some of those beautiful hormonal things that tend to beset animals as they get older. And a lot of these are chronic in as much as it comes on slowly, so you're seeing them every single day and you don't notice. So a reasonable indicator that something chronic's happening is when somebody that hasn't seen the animal for a while, a visitor or a guest or, dare I say, a relative wanders in and says, oh, he looks different.
Yeah.
And you haven't noticed it because it's been creeping up on you.
Right.
But they notice it because the last time they saw the animal was quite different. So the first sign of longer-term major issues really is demeanour. Now, I know you guys actually saw that.
Yeah.
The animal was acting a bit wacky and was starting to forget a few things.
Yeah.
And it turned out that part of that was reduced blood flow to the brain. So if you've got an older pet that looks like it's got Alzheimer's, it may well have, although it's not Alzheimer's, it's changing blood flow and aging brain cells. And as our pets get into older age, of course, you start to see strokes and some of those butte vascular things that humans get too. So don't rule out demeanour, okay? Right. If they're a bit flat, and I used to hear that a lot, oh, look, I wasn't going to bring him in, but he just looks flat. And I don't mean that literally, okay? There's a couple of things that are not good indicators, okay? The first not good indicator is food. I've seen animals with absolutely deadly cancers riddled up to the eye teeth, stuffing their faces with food right up until the day before they died.
Wow.
And I've seen cats with very minor illness go completely off their food. So food is not a good indicator. The other one that's not a good indicator in dogs is hot nose or dry nose. How often I've heard
Cold,
that?
wet nose. Oh, must be healthy.
Oh my
How
God, the
often do you
dog's
hear
dying.
that?
He's got a dry nose. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Dry noses is just a matter of the animal not secreting enough around its nose. And dry noses can happen at any time of the day or night. Hot noses, if they stay hot for a very long period, then feel the skin. It's the skin that's hot.
Uh-huh.
Noses can go quite warm all by themselves, but when the skin is hot too, it's often an indicator of fever.
Do you feel the pads of the feet or something, or anywhere on the skin?
Again, an animal with fever will be hot all over, okay, and will also be quite flat, and I mean that demeanour-wise. And the trick is to make sure that there isn't any chance of hyperthermia, okay, because that'll make them hot too. So unless they've been lying in the sun, there's probably a fever. Look, the second thing to look at with older animals where you're worried about chronic disease really is exercise tolerance. And that's a dead giveaway, right? They won't want to get up. They won't want to go for a walk. They won't go as far on the walk. In cats, you'll find them not moving about, like, you know, how cats often sleep from place to place. I call it mobile sleep, but, and they'll often just stay vegetative in the same place. And that's a bit unusual for a lot of cats. Yeah, they'll be a bit slow getting up for dinner. They're just not into the exercise. Have a look at their gums. Gums are a really good indicator. Real white gums is an issue. Brick red gums is an issue unless they're terribly hot and cooling down after a big run. Yellow gums is a good indicator of liver disease. So gums are quite useful. Dry gums are often a good indicator of dehydration.
So they should be pink.
They should be pink.
So they should be pink, not yellow, not red, not white.
But the amount of pinkness depends on your own animal.
It's very subtle, isn't it?
Say hello to their gum occasionally so you know what normal looks like.
Say hello to a gum.
Well, they keep saying we should be brushing teeth, and I did buy doggy toothbrushes, but I have to admit that they're not that fussed on it.
Yeah, I don't mind
them. The other one to have a look at is stance. How are they standing? And if your animal is a bit tucked up and the demeanour is off, it can be an indicator of all sorts of things, but definitely worth checking out. It can be kidneys, or it can be guts, or it can be liver, or it can be spine. And if it's tucked up and bites when it normally wouldn't be biting, then it's hurting.
So tucked up, do you mean they're trying to pull their chest up, or?
If you look along the line of the spine of most animals when they're standing, it's reasonably straight. So it comes down from the neck and a little bump across the shoulders, and then it dips down ever so slightly. When they hunch, you'll often notice a little hill between the shoulders and the hips. So that's hunched up, and they'll often be quite tense. The stomach muscles will be tense and stuff. So stance is useful. In animals with congestive heart failure, you'll often see them standing, your word, like a bulldog, with their elbows turned out and a little more forward than usual. So they actually look like they're sort of, you know, about to go and get all buffy and attack something.
Yeah, this is what prompted this whole story. We had no idea. We used to laugh. We'd go, oh, look, Cosmo's got his,
hello, bulldog,
he's standing like a bulldog. And
we
actually
thought it was because of our ignorance with diet from day one, where I think you mostly, I'm not blaming you, but I'm just saying, where Kaye mostly fed him chicken wings and bones and whatever, you know, and he really loved them, of course, and we thought, oh, this is good, we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, look, when they're standing like that routinely, and they're older and their exercise tolerance is a bit down and they're a bit forgetful, it's often a good indicator to go and get that heart checked out.
There we go. So some good advice from Dr. Joe Sillince from Pets Australia.
Great advice. And, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I still feel guilty about some of the things I probably missed with some of our now past doggies, but I don't think they would hold it against me.
You're listening to Vet Talk with Brian Pickering and Kaye Browne, and we're available in the iTunes store and also on www.vettalkradio.com.au.
Well, we might not be available there, but the podcast is.
Okay.
Another boom tish. Hey, when we first started Vet Talk, a lot of people thought it would be just a bunch of veterinarians talking about a whole lot of technical, vetty type stuff, right? But as it happens, vets often need the help of other vets for their own pets, especially if it's an area of medicine that they don't usually do or specialise in.
Absolutely. So we thought it'd be fun to put two vets together, two veterinary specialists, in fact, in front of a microphone and learn how the Animal Referral Hospital's internal medicine specialist, Dr. Narelle Browne, went about diagnosing what was wrong with surgical specialist Dr. Sarah Goldsmith's cat.
I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about a few things that you see commonly. Let's start with Charlie because he's my cat, and Charlie is recently had a lot of weight loss and he's now looking slim, taut and terrific, but he started coughing, as you know. And when he was presented to you, he'd been coughing for a couple of weeks. So how did you go about working up him as a coughing cat? What did you have to do?
Yeah, well, the first thing we do with a coughing cat is obviously listen to their chest and see how they sound. Are the lung sounds increased? Are they decreased? We look at the way they're breathing. Is there increased effort with how they're breathing? Have they got shallow respiratory rate? And how does their heart sound? Is there an arrhythmia? Is there a gallop rhythm? We'll look at their gum colour. Sometimes if they're not aerating properly, they may look, have a little bluish tinge there to their gums. And then the next step is generally take a chest X-ray, so we can get a good look at their lungs. Most of the time, we've got a fair idea whether it's going to be a cardiac disease or whether it's going to be lung disease. In cats, it's nearly always lung disease. They don't tend to cough like dogs do with cardiac disease. Okay. Yeah. So we did a chest X-ray with Charlie.
Right. And what did you see on the chest X-ray?
So on his chest X-ray, he had a pretty spectacular diffuse bronchial pattern. And that's pretty characteristic for cats with asthma. So when we see that, we can go ahead and then do some other tests like a bronchial wash or a tracheal wash in the cats and get a sample of the cells that are in those airways and then look at them. And typically for cats with asthma, they'll have a high eosinophil count in them, so the sort of cell we see with the allergies. And then we go ahead and we treat them with anti-inflammatory drugs.
Okay, so we put Charlie on some antibiotics as well as the anti-inflammatory because we didn't do a wash, is that right?
Yeah,
because
pretty much.
100%
sure. Yeah. Cats can get mycoplasmal infections, so we'll often cover for that. And the drug he's on often has anti-inflammatory effects as well, so there can be a double benefit there. But generally just to cover mycoplasmal infections.
So he's looking really good now. He's not coughing. What sort of things might have caused him to have asthma?
Yeah, so this is where we go back and we look at the home environment. So, I asked you questions about anyone smoking in the house, using any deodorising powders on the carpets, people that use talcum powder, some of those sprays, deodorising sprays, strong cleaning products in the bathroom, things like that that he might inhale that would irritate his airways. Yeah.
Right. And is it something that's likely to recur once he comes off medication?
It can do. I certainly recall a cat that used to come in every Saturday night with an acute asthma attack because the owner would be getting dressed and she'd be spraying perfume around that time, and it took us a while to work out that's what was triggering it. So sometimes there are obvious triggers. If you can remove the trigger from the environment, then it might not come back.
Right.
But if that trigger's still there, if this cat's reacting to dust mites or something like that, something that we can't take out of the environment, then it may well come back. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for helping me with Charlie. He's a much happier cat.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think that's amazing. Two of Australia's top specialists having a chat like pet owner and vet. It's like
everyone wants their pet to get better. And I have to admit, I felt a lot better when I heard Dr. Narelle say you can't get rid of dust mites in the environment because I know that I sneeze because of dust mites, and I suspect some of our pets over the years have reacted to that as well. And I don't feel like I'm such a bad house cleaner having heard that. At least it's a damn fine excuse. And you can use it too, guys, everyone listening.
Well, we're going to make sure that we put more specialists and vets and vet nurses, etc., together so that they can talk and ask each other questions, because I'm sure quite often they don't all understand exactly what the other one does. They might have a broad knowledge of it, but maybe not in the detail.
And then we can hopefully translate it for you.
And thanks again for joining us on VETtalk. Now, before we go, KB, you've got a little bit of a news roundup from the week?
Just a bit of a news roundup. There's been lots of fun stories around this week. But a story about an extraordinarily lucky koala who survived a close encounter with a car on a South Australian freeway has actually ruffled a few feathers. You see, the car was going over 110 kilometres an hour when the koala became lodged in the vehicle's grille. It was only when the driver reached her own garage a further 10 kilometres down the road that she spotted the marsupial. She called a wildlife rescue group which freed the koala and took him to a vet where X-ray shows no broken bones.
Wow.
Lucky koala. Wow. And so the koala's been,
so
released to the wild
he was
again.
Just, hanging onto the front?
He sort of got wedged in because of the speed of the car. Instead of being banged and going off and unfortunately dying, as far too many koalas do, he actually just sort of had a free ride and an armchair seat at high speed. But the controversy part of it is that the story has divided opinion on social media, with some praising the driver for getting help for the koala from the rescue group and others totally lambasting her for not stopping to check on the koala's condition or whether it might need help. So, should she have stopped or not? Well, freeway laws say that drivers are obliged to stop if it's safe to do so, and they can go to the emergency lane, to ensure the safety of the animal and also to prevent risk to other road users. Bottom line, we should all be looking out for koalas on the roads at the moment because not only is it Koala Awareness Month, it's also the time of year that koalas get a little bit frisky. Let's face it, they don't get frisky very often. And they're moving about looking to find a girlfriend or boyfriend.
Oh, yeah, so I guess, safety first for drivers and passengers, but certainly keep an eye out for those animals.
Sure, yeah. And if you come across an injured animal like that, National RSPCA team hotline is 1300-ANIMAL. Okay? So, another story. When we think about therapy pets, dogs and horses come to mind first, right? But a new study carried out in Australia has discovered a very different pet does wonders in calming children with autism. Do you know which one?
Cats?
Nope.
No.
Guinea pigs.
Ah, okay.
All right. Researchers placed wristbands on children under 12 to monitor their arousal levels, which are typically higher in autistic kids who don't always cope well in social settings like classrooms. Remarkably, they discovered that petting a cooked guinea pig actually resulted in lower stress levels among children with autism by providing a kind of social buffer that enabled them to interact over the pet rather than having to face the other kids face to face. So it's kind of a cool thing. Interestingly enough, the guinea pigs, the typical kids, when patting the guinea pig, they got more excited, whereas the ones with autism calmed down.
Isn't that interesting? So
it augurs well for teachers who, don't have a lot of resources, and unfortunately there are a lot of kids with autism. But here's something, a little intervention, a pet that wasn't thought of as being really helpful. Can do the trick.
So where was this study done?
It was done here in Australia. I don't know which state it was done. It's one of several that they've been doing over several years, and this is the latest one. And by the way, just while we think about it, even tarantulas, not here in this country, have been used to support children with autism, as have pot-bellied pigs. Now, in the US, there's a Vietnamese pot-bellied pig called Buttercup, and she visits special needs kids in San Francisco schools, and apparently one severely autistic boy is said to have spoken to his classmates for the very first time right after a visit with Buttercup.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
It's good.
Yeah.
I love it. We know pets are good for us, but how good? They're extra good for those with special needs. And lastly...
Yep. Let me guess. Is this the little puppy in the...
In the dryer?
In the dryer?
No, it's not, but I can mention that.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a little 2-year-old girl that was playing hide and seek with a puppy, and apparently popped the puppy into the clothes dryer and shut the door. Wandered off, as 2-year-olds do. Later, her older sister came on and went, I'll get that drying happening now.
Yeah.
The mother came home 2 hours later, couldn't find the puppy. Checked the dryer. There was the puppy,
Woof.
very, very hot.
Yep.
But okay.
Yeah.
And a visit to the vet said, puppy's okay. I think now the family's going to move the dryer off the floor and place it
Haven't
on
they
the
heard
wall.
of a clothesline or something? Saving energy. Yeah.
Lucky puppy.
Anyway, household hazards for pets. So that's one we'll be adding to the list. Children.
Yes. But is your dog ugly?
No dog's ugly. No dogs are ugly.
Well, if you live in South Korea, you'd probably get it some plastic surgery. You see, according to an article from Korean news site Chosun, there's a growing trend for owners there to take their pets for Botox, double eyelid surgery, stretch mark removal, and generally lots of things that waste a lot of money.
Yep.
I wondered why pet owners would do that and discovered that South Korea actually has the highest rate of plastic surgery for humans per capita in the world. The US is at number 6, actually, which is quite odd.
Interesting.
A typical high school graduation gift for a Korean teenager is either a nose job or a blepharoplasty. I'm not quite sure if that's the right way of saying it. Blepharoplasty.
Okay.
Whatever it is. It's where they do the double eyelid surgery.
Google it.
They put the crease in the eyelid to make the eye look bigger, and it's the most common procedure in Korea. An estimate suggests up to a third, maybe even up to 50% of all the women in Seoul, the capital city, have gone under the knife But the blokes do it too, you know, making up 15% of the market. They're big on plastic surgery. So I wonder what our listeners think about plastic surgery for pets.
Imagine if you had a Shar-Pei and you thought you just want to kind of, you know, take out all those wrinkles.
Iron out the wrinkles. Well, that's why you get a Shar-Pei, for the wrinkles.
That's some crazy news. Thank you, Kaye. We look forward to your news updates next week.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us again on VETtalk. Radio, TV, podcast, whatever you want to call us.
Audio, video, we've got it all.
And we'll be back same time, same podcast channel.
Next week.
Thanks for joining us. And if you like what we do, tell a friend. If you don't, tell us. But please, if you've got any stories, get in touch with us.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye now.